Welcome to Confirmation Bias, presented by the League Ambassadors.
I'm Ambassador Kenny Ken, and hockey is a sport full of criminals. That's my confirmation bias.
I'm Ambassador Junior Blue, and I couldn't find the Stanley Cup Finals on TV last year, and that's my confirmation bias.
I'm Ambassador Dad, and the NHL playoffs is more exciting than the NBA playoffs, and that's my confirmation bias.
I'm Red O, and the first time I put on ice skates, I busted my head. Haven't been on the ice since. That's my confirmation bias.
And I'm Ambassador Chef Curry. I watched the shootout, the end of the Caps game earlier. Hockey is lit, and I see why white people been hiding it from us for all these years. And that's my confirmation bias.
Welcome to Confirmation Bias, hosted by the League Ambassadors. As a reminder, you can follow us everywhere on social media. That's Twitter, that's Facebook. Visit our YouTube channel. Visit our website, theleagueam.com. That's also our social media handle. Also, you can now download Confirmation Bias. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, all that good stuff. We're live in effect. This is episode 4. And on today's show, we're going to talk about hockey.
Yes.
Confirmation Bias is not just about us tackling all sports and the hottest topics and the latest happenings, but also this is about confirming maybe some biases that we have about sports that we aren't as familiar with. And so on Thursdays, what we want to do is we want to take some time out to actually devote attention and focus to less popular sports like hockey or golf or tennis. We're even going to do some cricket and rugby. We're going to do some soccer, some NASCAR, some Formula One racing. And so that's, and we're looking to have some guests on the show as well. So that'll be a lot of fun. Today, with hockey, what I want to do is we're going to lay the groundwork on some history, just to provide some context. And then what we want to do, and this will be a staple of our Thursday shows, is we're going to ask questions. The questions that we're going to ask today that we're going to discuss amongst ourselves in an attempt to better understand this sport is who was the Michael Jordan of hockey, meaning who was the greatest, who was that global icon for the sport of hockey. And then the next question we have is who is the Biggie Smalls or the notorious B.I.G.? And what we mean by that is who was great but for a short period of time. And then the last question that we'll talk about, and this will be a reoccurring theme for all of the sports that we cover on Thursdays, is why isn't this sport a mainstream sport in America, or is it? So, looking forward to that. With hockey, started in 1917 in Montreal, Quebec. The National Hockey League, which is the hockey league that we're most familiar with, was a part of the National Hockey Association, which started in 1909 in Ontario. Basically, a bunch of the other leagues and teams fell out, and by 1924, the National Hockey League had expanded to the United States, where the first team was the Boston Bruins, which is a team that is still actually in effect today. Frank Calder is the first president, and they went with 4 teams, and actually it went up to 6 teams for 25 years. The National Hockey League was basically done in by the Great Depression, by World War II. And so the original 6 were the Boston Bruins, the Chicago Blackhawks, the Detroit Red Wings, the Montreal Canadiens, the New York Rangers, and the Toronto Maple Leafs. And then once we got into the 60s, that's when the National Hockey League started to expand because of competition from other leagues, primarily the World Hockey Association, as well as a desire to kind of put the game on TV. The World Hockey Association turned out to be a formidable opponent, at least for the first 7 years in the 1970s, until 1979, when the NHL and the WHA came to an agreement, which part of that agreement was the WHA had to cease operations, so they could no longer poach players. They were in courts fighting over players. The most notable player was, I believe, was Bobby Hull, who signed the largest contract at that time in 1974. I believe it was with the Winnipeg Jets. And so finally in 79, they moved away. They went away. The NHL became the only player on the block. And then in the 80s, there was a player who we're definitely going to talk about later, Mr. Wayne Gretzky, that transitioned over into the NHL, and literally the National Hockey League exploded. And in the 90s is when they went from, I believe it was from about 16 teams to 22 teams. Currently today, they have 30 teams. There will be a 31st team in Las Vegas next year.
Which is bananas.
Bananas. And it's huge.
Won't he?
A couple of things about the rules of the sport. Obviously, we know they play for the Stanley Cup. That's what their title is known for. And incidentally, the Stanley Cup is the oldest professional sports awards trophy in North America.
And the coolest.
It's the actual original. It's passed down.
Yeah, it is the coolest. It's also very dirty because they pass it around and drink out of it.
Why, it's cool.
Do more than that to it.
Hockey as a sport, like football, is a 60-minute game. They have 3 20-minute periods where there's intermissions or breaks in between the first 2 periods. They have an overtime period, which Kevin alluded to. You go to overtime, which is a sudden death experience. If they're tied, then they go to a shootout, which can be fun. Like basketball, basketball has 5 players on the court, 10 players total at a time. They have 6 players, so a total of 12. So not as many as, say, football. But like football, they got a lot of refs, a lot of officials. They got a referee, they got 2 linesmen, they got 2 goal judges. They have an official score. I believe football has 7 officials or 7 referees, and hockey has 5. Basically, there are 3 main rules with hockey. You can be offsides. You can't be offsides, I should say, and that involves a blue line and a red line. You can't make an offside pass, which is when a player, I guess, passes the puck from his defending zone to a teammate beyond the red line. So there's a red line, there's a blue line. And then there's a penalty called icing, which icing is essentially when the puck crosses the center line, the red center line, past the opposing red goal line. Complicated sport. There are a lot of penalties. You got a minor penalty, which is a 2-minute warning. So if you commit a penalty in hockey, a player has to come out. The offending player has to come out. And it ranges from basically 2 minutes to 10 minutes. You do get a penalty shot. I guess that's what happens when it's given to a player who is illegally impeded from behind when in possession of the puck with no opponent between him and the goal. No, that's not even what a penalty shot is. That is what a penalty shot is. That's not what it's given for.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean that's essentially it. It's super complicated. I mean, I found it to be super complicated, and maybe that's one of the reasons why it's not popular.
It's like soccer, lacrosse, field hockey on ice. It's a hodgepodge of a bunch of different.
And
sports.
we're not even gonna touch on lacrosse on our
That's like in a lot of countries, they actually say ice hockey because field hockey is popular.
It's popular, yeah. So the question to you guys is, why is this not a mainstream sport in America?
A lot of reasons.
I have a very simple reason. It's not accessible to everyone. You can't just be like, yo, Omar, you trying to go play hockey?
Yeah, you can't go down.
Let's go down to the park and play a pickup game of hockey. You can't do that. I mean, it's hard to.
You take that with all the equipment and the travel, it's expensive. So you don't have a lot of people playing, and if you want something to be popular, the more people that can play it, the more popular it can become.
That's an interesting point. I think there are a couple of other sports that we're going to talk about, like golf and tennis, where it's the same thing. It's expensive to play the sport.
And then it depends on your climate. Like you know, in up north or somewhere cold, there's lakes they're gonna play on. You have to have an indoor rink in California in order to learn how to play hockey.
Right.
You know,
Wayne Gretzky had a rink in his backyard growing up. I mean, that's life in Canada for you. You can't have that in California.
Yeah.
Kevin, is it a mainstream sport? I mean, you said it was lit.
Watching it, yeah, but it's cold here in Baltimore, and there's no ice rinks around here.
Another reason.
I think though that a big reason why it's not as popular is because of representation. I mean, growing up where I'm from, I'm sure you guys too, you didn't see anyone playing hockey who you wanted to be like. So I think because the sport isn't as diverse as the other ones, then people don't necessarily aspire to do that unless you grew up playing it or it's like a part of your culture.
Kevin took his Afrocentric pills today. He's ready.
I mean, that was part of the money issue. You know, it was something that basketball is easy. You don't need money. You can go out there and play barefoot. You can't get on that ice barefoot.
You can play invisible basketball.
Yeah,
I did.
Football, all you need is a field. Anybody can tackle. Also, it had part of the problem is it's a crowded sports market. You have basketball, football, and baseball. It's a distant fourth. It can't get it. However it's tried, it can't get that foothold that
It's
you
also
need
regional.
in the culture.
It's also regional here too. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, like, do y'all have with the high school you went to? You have a hockey team?
No,
They probably have them in Minnesota.
but in Harbor City there was an indoor hockey ring, or ice skating ring. That's where what's her name? I'm gonna butcher her name. She won a gold medal.
Christy Yamaguchi?
Yes.
Yeah,
They had one in El Segundo too.
Yeah.
One. He saved that.
He said,
Yeah.
what were you gonna say? What were you gonna say?
Sober.
What were you gonna say, Les?
I was gonna say another thing. I've been to a couple hockey games. I don't know if you guys have.
I want to.
But on TV, it's nothing like being in an actual game.
Which is interesting that Kevin found it
Yeah.
so intriguing because that I feel the exact same
Yeah.
way. Like I've tried to watch a couple
It
of
doesn't
games.
lend itself to TV because
No,
you
it
can't
doesn't.
see the puck.
You can't see the puck. You
But-
can't even see the lines, the
Right.
blue and the
Not-
red lines. I
Not
was just talking
completely
about.
though, because my confirmation bias is the playoffs. I watched zero hockey during the regular season, but when it's in the playoffs, it is lit. It is.
The best thing
very
about
exciting.
hockey is it's illegal to fight.
Which is why I said that they have criminals because they are there's assault happening all over the ring. Yeah, Kev.
Yeah, I was gonna ask Les that when you actually went to the game, and this is just my assumption. Does it seem like hockey is the least family-oriented game experience compared to the other three? Like these dudes are fighting, dudes are throwing beer. Like, does it seem like a family environment compared to the
It
other
actually
three big
did.
sports?
And I sat in the lower ring and I sat all the way up top. I went to two different games, and it did seem like a family area up top and the bottom. It wasn't any fighting on the ice, and there wasn't any in the stands. No beer throwing, nothing like that. It was literally little kids and everything going to see it. But yeah, that's just on TV. It's just not the same. It's nowhere near.
And you know what the thing is though, like to say it's not mainstream is I don't want to say an extreme, but it's as close to mainstream without being mainstream
Yeah.
because
The
there are
Stanley Cup was on NBC Sports.
That's listen,
mean,
that's one of the things
yeah.
that's interesting about this discussion, and it's going to be a recurring theme with all of these sports we're talking about because at
'cause
some point
it's mainstream in Canada.
I was going to say, is it a
Yeah.
confirmation bias of ours to say that, particularly hockey, that it's not mainstream in America? I don't know.
It is, like I said, it's by far the
It's a
number
distant
fourth,
fourth, yeah.
number fourth sport. But it is. There are a lot of people. We have 3 teams in California.
So is our
Foreshadow.
so when we talk about whether or not something is mainstream, are we using television exposure as the main factor?
I think pop culture has to play a factor. I mean, you look at any sporting event, on the commercials you'll see Peyton Manning or you'll see LeBron.
That's what I was saying. It never got a foothold in the culture.
Yeah.
And part of that is because everybody does not, it's not for everybody.
Yeah.
So basketball, everybody watches. Everybody can enjoy it. So they know who this person is. Football, everybody watches. Everybody enjoys it. Baseball, everybody watches. Everybody enjoys it. That is where that mainstream gate is broken.
So when we talk about pop culture, then this leads to the next question, which is, who's the Michael Jordan of hockey? And I'm going to jump out on a limb and say that we all have the same guy, that guy being the great one, Wayne Gretzky. Kevin, am I right about that? Is it Wayne Gretzky for you?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. His name says it itself. You look at his accomplishments. He leads the NHL in goals scored, more assists than anybody. He actually has more assists than anyone has points, which makes him like,
Which is crazy.
it makes him like the Kareem and John Stockton in one.
Yeah.
I think he's the only player to have 200 points in a season, and he's done that 4 different times. That's outrageous.
Yeah.
He had 14 consecutive 100-point seasons.
Which is bananas. The guy has the record for having records in a sport.
Right.
I mean, I think me and Kev talked about this before. Like, he might be the only definitive, like, no question GOAT of a sport. I mean, you can question.
He has the only league-wide retired jersey.
Yeah.
Only league-wide
Boom.
retired jersey. 99.
I mean, he's also the one, as I said earlier, he's the one that was single-handedly responsible for the North American proliferation of hockey. He went from the Edmonton Oilers.
And he the one who designed his own trade.
Yeah.
That's when you know you great.
Right.
He was like, nah, I'm not with that. I know I'm getting traded, but I need these 2 people to come with me.
Right.
And they said, okay.
And what is he responsible for here?
Having 3 hockey teams.
Yes.
Oh, and to a lesser degree, the Staples Center. Most people don't realize Staples Center was
Yes.
not built
That's
for
the
the
Kings.
Lakers.
Right.
That's
it was
right.
built for the Kings.
Yes.
And that was the road that he built.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, he won 8 straight MVP awards, Hart awards, 9 total. I mean, he also
8
the Hall of
straight.
Fame. The Hall of Fame, they just waived the time he had to wait.
They've
just waived
only done that 3
Yeah.
times.
They've done it 3
Like,
times.
Yeah.
The funny thing about hockey though is you looking at all the awards he won, you have to memorize a lot of names.
Yeah, for real.
Like,
Yeah, it's all named after people.
like,
Yeah.
it is
MVP don't cut it.
It got to be the Hart Trophy.
Right. Okay.
What's
So
the
then,
Conn Smythe? Is that the
yeah.
something?
Yeah. So then let's go to a question that I think is less unanimous, and that is, who is the Biggie Smalls
Biggie.
of the National Hockey League? Meaning, who is the guy who had a great career, but a really definitive career, but it ended up short? I'll start with you, Dev.
Okay, well, this would normally be a traditional Biggie pick for me in this sort of segment, but I got a story to tell, man. Like, my guy's name is John Scott.
Okay.
Okay, and John Scott, he's a career fringe player, a goon, somebody who would routinely, like, he do the rough stuff, right?
Right.
Commandments.
He basically was a nobody. And in last season, 2016, he received the most All-Star votes for any player, even though he's only scored 1 point and only played in 11 games with his team at that time, which was the Coyotes. It was a joke. Basically, all the fans voted him in because he was a goon. So the way that they actually have the new All-Star rules it's very different. It's not just one game. It's sort of like a tournament. So they have like a 3-on-3 tournament.
I saw it. That
Yeah.
just happened. Was this the first year that they just did it?
Last year.
Last year?
Yeah, so
Okay.
basically they break it down to the different divisions, and you pick 3 teams, and then you play like a single elimination.
Okay.
So they picked him as a joke.
Pay
to get
attention,
in.
NBA.
Yeah, right? So he had only scored 5 goals in his entire career up until that point.
All right.
He was always in like the developmental league for NHL. That was on January 2nd, 2016.
Okay.
So on the 15th, he was with the Coyotes. They traded him to the Canadiens.
Okay.
And he was sent down to their minor league
Okay.
affiliate.
Yeah.
So he made the All-Star team on one team, and they traded him. So the Coyotes, his former team, who's in the Pacific Conference, asked him to remove himself from the All-Star team. And then he issued a statement saying, guys, I don't deserve this. Go ahead and vote for my teammates. And then he pulled an Omar and reneged. And he decided to play anyway.
Okay.
So then the Coyotes tried to persuade him to not play, and they tried to say he wasn't eligible because he wasn't in the conference that he was currently playing for, because he got voted in on the Pacific. Now he's on the Eastern Conference.
Okay.
And he's also not even on a real team. He's in their lower division in the AHL.
Okay.
So basically, they tried to poo-poo all that. So that was on the 15th. On the 19th, not only did they allow him to continue to play in the All-Star game, he was voted the team captain. So he wrote an article to the Players Tribune about how the NFL basically tried to shit on him and shut him down, which got a lot of social media outcry from everyone. Like, oh, shit, we're going to root for the little guy, right? So when it comes down to actually playing in the game, he scores 2 goals in the semifinals, which helps him get to the finals, and his team wins the All-Star game, and he gets voted the All-Star MVP. But he wasn't even voted in.
Right.
So they tried to say, nah, you can't have the All-Star MVP. So then fans and Henrik Lundqvist, one of the game's greats, took to Twitter and started the hashtag Vote MVP for Scott. And then the NHL gave in, and then he got the MVP. So that was that was when the All-Star game occurred. 3 months later, he was still down in the developmental league, and they called him up for 1 game. He did shit, nothing in the game. And then after the game, that was in April, they said, you got 2 options. You can go back down to the developmental league, or you can go home. He said, I ain't seen my family, so I'm out. So then he actually retired in December of this past season, and basically never played again. His helmet that he wore in the All-Star game is now in the Hall of Fame, and his agent can't stop getting calls about making a movie about this motherfucker.
So he just more like small's big, not big smalls.
Yeah, but I mean, from January 2nd to January 19th, he was on top of the world.
He was on top of the world. All right.
Wow.
Omar, who was your Biggie Smalls for hockey?
Another one that don't really fit the in the spirit.
Oh man.
I mean, well, mine is Lemieux, and the reason
Who? What's his first name?
Mario
Lemieux.
The reason why I chose him was
I gotta hear this,
because of we're not spitballing this, but we're trying to make a comparison that don't exactly fit. And my thing is, he was supposed to be the next guy. Not next guy, he was the guy. He was supposed to break all Gretzky's records.
Right.
He was supposed to be the greatest of all time. And he it just so happened, besides the injuries, I mean, there was a point where the man couldn't even tie his own shoes, because if he bent over, it was over with. That cancer, once that hit, it was a wrap. He was out for 3 years. He beat it.
How many years did Mario play?
He played a lot. He played total of
14 or 15.
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, he wasn't the same after. So he wasn't able to do what he was slated to do, which if he would have been playing at the same rate, he would have broke a lot of those Gretzky records.
Yeah.
That cancer took it away.
Yeah.
And he had a major back injury too. He was his finesse with skating was Gretzky-esque, except he was 6'4". So he had the things that Gretzky didn't have, which was power. So he had it both. So it's just that his body didn't hold up. And that's the only reason why I chose him, because he would have been the greatest if he kept playing at that level.
14 months to 14 years. Kevin, who you got?
I took the goon route too. I found a guy named
Baltimore
Mr. Maurice Richard, who actually lived Biggie's lyrics, if you will indulge me for a moment. He started out hot too. He was the first player to score 50 goals in a season. He played with the Montreal Canadiens. So he came out hot. Everybody from his hometown was loving him in the streets, but people from outside of Montreal were basically hating on him because he was kind of a foreigner. He wasn't accepted, being a Frenchman. Opposing fans would call him all types of racial slurs at games. Opposing players would get away with holding him during the game. Referees would never give him calls. And it kind of seemed like they didn't know about Richard's stress-filled day with a baby on the way and mad bills. They didn't give my man any love. And a biography came out about him actually compared his plight at that time to what Jackie Robinson was going through here in the States, which I thought was kind of interesting. So one game when Richard was playing against the Boston Bruins, he ended up catching a high stick to the head from one of the Bruins players. And he decided he had enough of the nonsense. Rich retaliated and actually beat up the dude that hit him with his stick, just destroyed his face. And then the referee to intervene to break it up got punched twice and knocked out unconscious. So to me, I was like him dropping the equivalent of "Who shot ya?" He wasn't. he was not playing out here. After the game, the Boston police showed up to the locker room and tried to arrest him, but he had his Rottweilers at the door. His teammates barricaded the locker room and would not let him get arrested. Yo, this was crazy. I had to look at it. It was nuts. So afterwards, he ended up turning himself in. The NHL president suspended Richard for the remainder of the season, which costed him the scoring title that year. Fans protested the suspension, which led to what they call the Richard riot, which was 6,000 people boycotted and protested, and then 37 people ended up getting taken to the hospital. Hundreds of people got arrested. They were losing their mind over this. And in my opinion, I think had this French-Canadian coastal beef not happened, who knows how Maurice's season would have ended that year, because he was on the road.
The fans are in listening to you guys. The fans don't take no shit.
There's a reason why
NHL.
You have the statement only in hockey.
Yeah. Les, who's your guy?
I had Mike Bossy from the New York Islanders.
Okay.
He played for 8 seasons. He was the Rookie of the Year, 15th overall pick. He won 4 Stanley Cup Finals with the Islanders. 2-time scoring leader. And he got no MVPs because he played in the Gretzky era. In 752 games, he had over 1,100 points, and had a knee injury in his 9th season and never played again. So in a game where you can play up to 15, 20 years. Gretzky played 20 years.
Yeah,
he had 8 years, 8 full seasons, and that was it.
8 seasons. Yeah, that's
goddamn knee injury.
That's so. Yeah, I went the same route you went, Les, in just trying to find a great player over a short period of time. One of the greatest, Bobby Orr. We talked about Gretzky, how with the Hall of Fame, they waived the mandatory 3-year waiting period. They did the same thing with him. He had 8 consecutive years where he won the Norris Trophy, which the Norris Trophy is for the top defensive player. He's the only player in NHL history to have 4 of the major NHL awards in a single season. He was a great player. And in fact, he was the main player. He's the player that basically sent the fight between the WHA and the NHL into overdrive, because he was the big player that the WHA took away from the NHL. So that's the route we went. Those are definitely some interesting sort of selections. We will come back to hockey later on in the confirmation bias season around Stanley Cup time, because we got a whole lot of other sports to cover. Real quick before we get out of here, we would be remiss if you didn't catch our show on Tuesday. Definitely check out iTunes and catch our show. But we were having a discussion, and we got a couple of minutes. We were having a discussion, particularly between Omar and Devin, about the NBA and about them resting players, and Adam Silver sending out the memo saying owners need to get involved. And we'd started to shift into a place where there was strong dissent between Omar and Devin. We're gonna pull a mini issue with it or not. A mini issue with it
unofficial.
Hey,
if you win or not.
unofficial.
Unofficial.
1 minute, Devin. Start with what your main point was about the rest and why it was hogwash.
It's hogwash because you play to win the games. And if I'm Popovich,
He got right in
I'm
it.
resting my players to win. And you mentioned something the other day about you play for your boss. Their boss is not Adam Silver. Their boss is whoever owns the damn team. And the team owner wants to win because there's more merchandise, there's more playoff money, there's more winning, there's more longevity, and there's more marketing. Period. That's why you rest.
Boom.
I'm here as a fan, and if I spend my hard money to go to a game and you don't play because you're healthy and you just resting, that's a straight fuck you to me and everybody in my family because I worked my ass off for these tickets.
You got 41 of them.
Yeah, and that's fine. My whole thing is, like, the greats don't do this. The greats do not. I don't need rest. I want to play because that's what I am. I'm great.
hey,
In order
guys,
to be
watch
great,
this.
you got to keep playing.
Who's great? Who's great today? Who's great today, Omar? Who do you want to shout out today?
I know one thing. Willie Bobo ain't resting.
Who's Willie Bobo, Omar?
I don't know. You tell me. I don't know who didn't like Willie Bobo.
Yeah, Willie Bobo ain't sitting down because Willie Bobo just like the hoop. He don't know no better.
Russell Westbrook is Willie Bobo.
But you know what? My whole thing was, it was about fandom. If I'm paying for this, but again, as long as the fans and there's no consequences, they gonna keep doing what they doing. As a fan, that sucks to me. As a fan, I never want to see that because if you sit down at your job and say, "Nah, I don't want to come to work today,"
It's called PTO.
Kevin, since you took your Afrocentric pills, I want to ask you: does it smell a little bit like the slave master is dictating things in the NBA?
Listen, I'm gonna reference the good friend Breezy who hit us up on Twitter. He mentioned that it does. It sounds like that they're controlling the labor. The owners are trying to control the labor of the NBA. But then my counter to that would be, well, if you compare it to the game back then, players now have more control over their brand, have higher contracts. They have more on the line. So as a player, yeah, it makes sense to want to sit to prepare for the playoffs. But of course, Omar's a fan. Y'all know I'm cheap. If I'm spending money, play.
My thing is, you don't have to play the whole game. You don't. You can start, play a couple minutes, come back in the second half, play a couple minutes. If I brought my kid here to see Kobe play, Kobe better play if he's healthy.
You should have checked the schedule, brother.
All right. On that note, we'll shut it down. We thank you again for watching Confirmation Bias. Our show is on Tuesdays and Thursdays, so check us out both days. 30-minute show, in and out, hot topics on Tuesday. On Thursday, we're tackling sports that maybe we aren't as familiar with. We want you to take the ride with us. We thank you for visiting. Check us out on social media everywhere at The League AM.com is our website. At The League AM is our handle. Kevin, you got anything?
I do want to thank everybody who chimed in via Facebook Live and commented, viewed. We got over 60-something comments, good family, friends. So appreciate you guys, man. And what we'll do is, on our Tuesday shows, we'll answer the questions that you guys put either on Twitter, hit us through DM, or on Facebook Live so we can make sure we get to you guys.
Damn, Kevin, you getting DM'd on the show?
Hey.
Yeah.
We'll see you next time. Thank you.